You know, this is Kenny Harder's old horn. It survived the hurricane.
Yeah.
And you worked with him a long time. I did too, but why don't you tell him some stories about Kenny?
The man was talented. He not only played sax, trombone, flute, clarinet, trumpet, and he sang like Louis Armstrong. He was a gem for me. He stayed with me for 18 years.
Now the big story to me out of all this concerns Boots Randolph. And this was when Boots Randolph, before he made his yakety sax and became nationally known and gold records and all that, Boots Randolph was playing out at Keesler Air Force Base here in Biloxi. And someone told him about Clarence Harder and these high notes that he played on his saxophone. And they said, you really ought to go out and hear this guy, because nobody has ever done that before that he knew of. What he did was certain finger combinations on the horn that are not on a fingering chart, he figured these things out. He was just a genius, like I said, in that respect. And these notes were so high, they were like what they call harmonics or overtones or what have you. They were so high that some of them were almost inaudible, you know. So anyway, Boots Randolph comes to the job, listens to him play, and after the job, he asked him if he would show him those fingerings, and he did. He showed Boots Randolph those fingers, and he later used those fingerings in his job and some of his recordings.
On Doris Street, maybe 5 or 6 houses from where I lived and grew up, Clarence Harder was born and raised there. And the stories about Clarence in the neighborhood were legendary. He started playing saxophone when he was a little kid. As it turned out, I became a saxophonist too, along with Clarence's son, Kenny. And Kenny and I played a lot of music together growing up. I went on and music became my profession, and I still play saxophone. And one of the things that just hit me after I started playing saxophone, long after I'd left Biloxi, and I was listening to all of the legendary saxophone players, listening to recordings and listening to some of them live. Some of those considered to be the great saxophonists. And I happened to pull out an old CD of a live recording of Clarence playing, and I was stunned. I didn't realize it at the time when I was small. He was in that league. He could play, but he was absolutely a creative genius.
In the 70s, I would go over to Lee Street, and that's where Mr. Harder had his little shop. And he had this one-man band that he did. He had vacuum cleaners that played saxophones. He had a trombone set up with a shoulder, and he'd play it and do it. He had a guitar that was upside down turntable for a phonograph or whatever, and it would go turn as it went around. He would hit different things with his foot that would change the chords, and that would strum a guitar. This man was a genius. I mean, he was unbelievable. He had about 10 or 12 different instruments in there, and he was funny. He was just great. And it's a shame that that the one-man band didn't survive. It was left to just deteriorate, and that's a shame. But hey, he made a lot of people happy. He was funny. He was just the ultimate entertainer. I loved him.
I really believe that he will be to music as is George Ohr is to pottery, and to Walter Anderson across the bridge here in Ocean Springs is to art.
Let's fly down or drive down to New Orleans.